Hello, I'm Dr. Angie McCartney.
And I'm Ruth McCartney.
Welcome to TeaFlix,
where each episode's intimate conversation features a fascinating guest across the spectrum of Beatles world, pop culture, Grammy winners, the music industry, chefs, producers, music stars, actors, and more. So bottoms up and join us as they spill the tea on TeaFlix.
And there we are, 001. We are live. Fantastic. Here we
Hello,
are.
darling. Yeah.
Resplendent in peppermint.
Yes.
Can't really see the little one today because she's sitting down on the low chair.
Yeah. But it was 2 for 1 at one of these lovely, places here have special Tuesdays for old farts.
And speaking of special Tuesdays.
Yes. Today is a very special Tuesday.
It is. We are very honoured and excited to welcome back an old friend of the Mc family and to the broadcast. Can you see us okay, Martin, upstairs?
Yeah, it says going live in 0 seconds.
Okay. There we are. Okay. Just took a minute to catch up. So back to our fabulous guest live from London. Without further ado, journalist, raconteur, man about town, popular resort figure, screenwriter, television writer, and best-selling author, Mr. Ray Connolly. And the crowd goes wild.
Hello, darling.
Hello, how are you? Good to see you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You too. Thanks for making it so late. Are we cutting into your tea time?
No, we don't eat till 9 o'clock.
Okay. Well, you don't. You're real late eaters.
Yeah.
Bit of a raver, are we?
Well, I wouldn't say that. No.
Not at all.
It's not short. That's better. I can see you better now. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure that's a good thing, but oh well.
It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Well, I was so thrilled, Ray, when you said you would do it, because I thought maybe you were too big time to come on my little show. But
When have I been big time, Angie? I've never been big time.
Oh,
You should be.
I'm not supposed to say bullshit on television, but bullshit. Okay, fine.
I
Go
don't-
on Facebook. Cut me off.
Go on, put me off. But no, it's just, I'm very flattered to be asked, to be honest. There you go.
Jolly good.
Well, jolly good. We
there
share
won't be
this.
any charge.
We share this to a lot of Beatle groups after the fact too. So
Yeah.
hopefully, we'll get lots of traffic to your wonderful website. I started researching it over the weekend, and I just got lost in how much stuff you've done for writing, not just books and blogs and newspapers, radio plays, movie scripts. I mean, which is your true love?
I like writing novels, actually, most of all. But I like fiction, and there's a story about the Beatles if they hadn't made it on the website.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And it was a radio play, and I thought this is more than that. It ought to be available to everybody forever.
Right.
I kind of like that best. One of the best things I've done, because it's sort of like it wasn't certain they would make it. And then I like the idea of them living in Liverpool and going their own different ways, and then eventually finding a way to, make things happen for them. But and also it's about Frida Kelly, who you probably know.
Oh, very well.
Yeah.
You know Frida well, who was a good friend, and she was there all the time as their fan club secretary in Liverpool, and she's very loyal to them, still loyal. And I thought I'll give her another life. That what would have happened to the Beatles and Frida if they'd not got famous.
That's right.
And so it's about Frida, really, with a completely new life for her. I thought
that's
and she loved it. She was. And I thought she might say, "Oh, you better put someone else's name on it," but she didn't. She said, "No, I like it. Keep me there." Anyway,
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, she's become quite the media sensation in her later years between your piece, Sorry Boys, You Failed the Audition, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, her nephew, Ryan White, his first directorial piece was the documentary Good Old Frida.
Yeah. So she deserves it, I mean.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, someone like Frida is in the background all the time. And when you meet her, she's wonderful. And I first met her on the Magical Mystery Tour in 1967.
Yeah.
And that was virtually my first big story. And I also was the first time I met Paul McCartney. And I went into, this is a story for you. I was told, go and follow them. And it was like my first month or so at the Evening Standard in London. They said, before the Beatles in your car. So I did. And we went off down the Great West Road, or not the Great, somewhere down there. Anyway, the Great Southwest. And we ended up in sort of Devon that night, in a place called Dawlish, I think. And I didn't know anybody. And all the press were following them, and they knew everybody. So I felt really left. I didn't even know them. So I sort of sat by myself thinking, how do I ever break into this group of people? How do I get to know them? And suddenly this guy sits next to me. And it was Paul. And I thought, what shall I say? I don't know. So I said, I know your dad.
Oh, it was a good one. Yeah.
I know. It's all I could think of. And he said, oh, right. We got talking. And that was it. And that evening went on. And then the next day he saw me, hello, that's fine. And from then on, he introduced me one by one to John and Ringo. I never got on with George. I mean, George didn't like press, and, no press. So, but it's one of those fantastic things that happen to you in life, totally by accident. And it's partly because of you, Angie, because when I met his dad, I met you, and you were very nice to me. And I was very nervous.
Oh, I know. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. And I come to see Mike. And that was also my first ever interview with anybody.
Was it really? Wow.
And I was sort of turning up and and then these very nice people, you and Jim, took me in and sort of said, and Mike was in bed, had to get him out of bed. And it went on for a long time. We sort of talked for a long time. And so there you are. That's my story. I can go now, can I?
No, not yet. Indeed not. No.
Well, I remember, meeting you when I was a little tiny tot, a little kid. But I know my dad had a definite fondness for you in his heart, because he was like, you were just unlike all the other journalists. You
weren't pushy.
You weren't pushy. You were real. You were honest. You obviously had a passion and an earnestness about you, if that's even a word. And he just took a liking to you. So I think that's, how many, you probably can guess how many journalists knocked on the door at Rembrandt trying to get in and kind of get a story.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and Jim would he would sniff if he didn't like something.
If he didn't like something, he'd sniff.
That meant, no, give him the bum's rush, don't put the kettle on. But he just took a real fancy to you as a young, earnest lad trying to earn your crust and do it, the right way, and do the research and all of that stuff. So it was, we never saw a lot of each other, but we've always had this closeness, I think, through the years.
Yeah. I remember you coming to, you, Angie, coming to our house when I was to London. I began on the Evening Standard. And then I was going really up in the world by then, very quickly. And you'd come, when you were in London, saying at Paul's house, you'd come by and knock on the door and come in and see our little children. And I remember Jim always had half a crown for the children in his pockets, which is the old-fashioned thing in England.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, before you go, and then it's all, Angie, have you got half a crown? This sort of thing. And it was very nice and old-fashioned, and that's what people did.
You did in those days, yeah.
I was the right little bees, and when before Ange married Jim, I had my kidney out, and we were living, hand to mouth and warming our clothes in the while we made the toast in the grill, and just keeping the heat switched off and living on £5 a week, her widow's pension. And sometimes
that's how we're living now. It's terrible in London. With no money, it's awful. So go on.
Yeah.
So people used to, if we'd go to Pwllheli, because she used to play the piano at Butlins or whatever, or we had friends who lived in Blackpool, and we'd get a bus pass and go up to Blackpool, and I'd be hopping and dancing on the promenade, and these old biddies in the wind shelters, the bus shelters, they give you threepence. Remember the threepenny bits? Or a penny, or sometimes you'd get sixpence, and I'd run over to Ange and say in a very loud voice, "Here, mummy, this nice lady's just given me some money. Put it in your purse so we can buy a tin of beans," and it would usually get another 50 pence, have another 10 bob out.
We should try that again. Actually, we're going to start tomorrow.
Me too.
Yeah.
Go outside the Home Depot and say, look, you know, he gave me 25 cents. You know, if only I had another dollar, you know.
Or a euro. Yeah. Oh God,
absolute
I know.
bugger. So yeah, we used to come down to London to Cavendish Avenue and always look forward to come and see you and Plum and what have you. So
and
how
your little children?
I know. How old are your kids now?
How old are they? This will break your heart, Angie. Louise, who you last saw when she was about 6, is now 53. And I think Dominic is 51 and Kieran is 48, 49. One of those.
God almighty. Yeah.
I wonder how it happened.
It's just. But of course, as you know, your children are always your children. They never get any older.
No.
It never changes. So,
that is still my baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still trying.
And you're still their mum, and I'm still their dad. And
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
absolutely. So when you published the piece on Mike McGeer, did your editors presumably say, well, you got an in there with the Mac family, can you go? And is that how you got sicked on going with the Magical Mystery Tour following the madness?
No, not quite. I did the piece on Mike for the Liverpool Daily Post, where I worked as a sub-editor. They didn't want me to be a writer. I thought I'm probably quite good at this. And so then I did a few more, like Roger McGuff and a few other people. And I sent them to the editor of the Evening Standard in London.
Oh, I
said,
see.
this is the sort of thing I do. I went down for an interview, and I couldn't do it at first because I had a sort of contract, had to stay a further year at the Daily Post. But by the time I got there, then I got a job as an interviewer. And basically, as a reporter, I mean, I was really basically mainly a pop reporter, but I sort of spread it very quickly. I mean, in the end, I was doing whatever I wanted. But at first, and then I got my own page.
Yes.
And then it got bigger and bigger, you know. It went very quickly. I'm always amazed at how quickly my career went. When I look back, oh my God. I was incredibly lucky.
Well, I think, you might call it luck. Obviously, you had to have the talent as a writer. And there is some luck involved in everything, of course. But I think, you know, the celebrities and the people you were interviewing knew that you were one of those rare animals that was as good as your word. You know, if they said something off the record, that will stay with you forever.
Well, I have a very famous recollection of John Lennon telling you something off the record that he was going to leave the Beatles, but not to tell anybody, and you didn't.
No, never did.
You could have made a fortune with that story then.
I could, but, you know.
No, I quite agree.
I mean, basically, he'd flown me to Canada. We got very friendly, and he flew me to Canada, and he couldn't wait to tell me. I mean, he came in, he took me to his bedroom, and he said, listen, something to tell you. And he told me, and I thought, oh, my God, this is terrible.
End of the world.
It's a great story for me, but it's terrible news because I love the Beatles. Why break them up, you know?
Yeah.
And then he said, well, don't write it, and I'll let you know when you can. So I said, all right, I won't. And then weeks go by, and I kept saying, well, can I do it yet? Can I do it yet? And he said, no. And then Paul, of course, let the story out in a way by accident. I don't think he actually meant to say what he said, but he did. And so I rang John the next day, and I said, and he said, I've seen the papers. I said, yeah, well. He said, why didn't you write it when I told you? I said, well, you told me not to. He said, you're the journalist, Connolly, not me. So, you know, you couldn't win with him, really. But anyway, I'm glad I didn't, because we stayed friends, and we may not have done if I'd written the story.
Yes, absolutely.
Also, they could all trust me. I just, you know, but it's what you grow up with, you know.
Absolutely.
If your mum tells you not to do something, you don't do it. You don't tellerize it, and you don't go back on your word.
That's right. Yeah.
That's right. Well, but these days that's very hard to find. Especially
well, I think papers are different these days because, you know, if everything's headlines all the time. I mean, my famous one was when Dusty Springfield came out to me about being gay.
Yeah.
And I kind of worried because, you know, I was slightly in love with her too. And then I took her home, and she said, you know, I may have ruined my career today. And I thought, no, you've not. It's all right. So what I did is I hid that bit in the middle of a piece about Dusty at 30. And then the next day I was away, but she rang up and she talked to Plum and she said, just tell him that's fine. And that was fine, except that weeks and months, years later, everyone found the piece and put it in headlines of the news world. Dusty.
Yeah.
And I hadn't done that. I'd hidden it, which is what she wanted. She wanted it out, but she didn't want headlines.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
You do your best.
You do, but things are going to get taken out of context. And now, in this day and age of deep fakes, where you can literally take bits of somebody's voice that's been pre-recorded on anything and edit it, like the latest Anthony Bourdain documentary, they had so much of his voice recorded. They put his voice into the movie, reading things that were, granted, they were written in his diaries and his journals, but they were words he'd never actually said. So nowadays, you can't even believe. Jimmy Mack, my dad used to say, there's only two things you can believe in the press. Yeah. It should have been 3. It should have been Ray Connolly, and the others were the date and the price.
Yeah. Well, that's right.
But I think that's especially true now. So how did you get involved with the whole David Essex world? Because I had a mad crush on David when I was a kid.
I still have.
Well, it's not as pretty as me, not anymore. Anyway.
No. But, hasn't got as much hair as you, anyway.
But he was beautiful. I mean,
gorgeous. Oh, he was gorgeous.
He was gorgeous, yeah. I met, what happened was, David Putnam became a friend of mine in London.
Oh, yeah.
And I went to his house one day to borrow a book. Because I know he'd been to New York and got a book on Elvis, the Jerry Hopkins book on Elvis. So I went there and then I borrowed it. And while we were there, he said, what are you doing? I said, I've just written a novel. He said, what else? I said, well, nothing else. And he said, well, why don't you write a film for me? Well, I'd never even seen a film script, never written one. So he said, I don't know how to. He said, I'll tell you. So we sat there and he told me how to write a film script. And over that cup of tea, we just planned that'll be the day. Just like that. I mean, it was a vague plan, but then I'd begun writing it, and he'd come to breakfast every morning for weeks, and I'd write a few more, not every, but lots of mornings. I'd just write a bit more, and I never thought it would ever get made, because the guy was so unsympathetic in the film. You had to get someone who was really beautiful and nice, and so Putnam went to see Godspell, and David Essex was in it, and he rang me. He said, I think we found our boy. He's so good looking. You're going to forgive him anything. And I met him, and obviously you did, because it was just beautiful. And that's how we got in with him. But it was all,
amazing.
All accidents, You just...
Yeah.
That's crazy. And then after that, you did Stardust, right?
Yes, Stardust. We had Ringo in That'll Be the Day.
That's right. Yeah,
and he was really good.
He is a good actor.
Yeah. We weren't going to get him. What we did, Neil Raspinall were involved with Neil Raspinall, and he was going to do the music for us. And David Putnam and I hadn't been to Butlins ever. Not like you. We'd never been there. And so I said, well, Ringo went. So we went to talk to Ringo at Apple. And Ringo told us a funny story, made us laugh. And so on the way out, David Putnam said to me, why don't we offer him the part that Billy Fury got finally? And I said, well, why don't we offer him the bigger part, Mike? He said, do it. And I said, well, I don't know. It was okay in Hard Day's Night. We don't know. So anyway, we did, and he jumped at it, and he did it, and it was great.
Oh, yeah, fabulous, yeah.
And then he wouldn't do the second film. And he thought it was probably too close to, real life for him. But it was very, very... I always thought he could have had a bigger career, if he'd gone into films and played just a few sort of good parts like that. He could have done really well.
Yes.
But anyway, he didn't have to.
He was in a movie called Candy as well, wasn't he?
Yeah. I never saw it, though. Did you? I didn't
No.
There you are, you see, but you see that of the day.
Yeah.
Right.
And wasn't he in, was it The Magic Christian that he was in?
Yeah, I didn't see that either.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't sort of, I don't think they were very good, to be honest. No one ever said, you've got to go and see The Magic Christian.
Right. I mean, they're famous films now because Ringo is still an icon and Ringo's famous and everybody knows about them. But John dabbled in acting too, didn't he, with How I Won the War?
He wasn't bad in that. He was okay. He was quite good. Yeah.
And, I think they'd had a little bit of, film experience with Hard Day's Night and Help. And I think it was a bit Hollywood. It was a bit fun. It was a bit different, wasn't it, from, the rock and roll stuff.
I think John found it boring, waiting all the time.
I know there's not. Yeah, sure.
When you're shooting, you spend 6 weeks waiting around and 10-minute shooting.
Yeah. Hurry up and wait because,
really boring.
In Abbey Road with George Martin, they'd go in and they'd cut 3, 4, 5 songs in a day. It was all happening all the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, they were amazing like that.
Right.
They were.
And then, you've done a bunch of stuff for television as well. You did a series, The Rhythm of Life, which was a documentary with George Martin, right?
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, that was I'll tell you how that came about. I wrote a piece for the Times. I had to go and see a film, and a rotten film, but great music. So I wrote a piece about music and film. Someone saw it, and they wanted to do a series about about music, and put me together with George Martin, and so we did that. And I'd known George from a couple of Beatles sessions and things, but I was really frightened of him because he was the boss, and I was sort of going there timidly, and Paul would take me in, and I'd sit thinking, I hope they don't notice me because it might get kicked out. So then I may get on with George. We did very well. I don't know. I mean, it was just great to be taken as an equal.
Yes.
Like Martin,
why not? And why not, indeed?
But, I knew nothing really about music the way they knew it or the way he knew it.
Yeah.
But, he didn't mind.
George did a lot of other different stuff apart from the Beatles that a lot of people don't really know about. The Goons and
Peter Sellers,
Dudley Moore.
He
did some classical stuff as well.
The great thing about George Martin was that he knew everything about music, all kinds of music, classical music, funny music, Scottish. There's Jimmy Shand records. You remember the Jimmy Shand? He'd have a Scottish country dance things. He did those.
Yes.
He did that. George did that.
He did
Monroe. He did this wide range.
Yes.
So he knew everything about music, but nothing about rock and roll. He literally knew nothing.
Wow. Isn't that amazing?
The Beatles knew everything about rock and roll and nothing about everything else. Put them together, eureka. And that's what happened.
But I mean, you also did Honky Tonk Heroes, right? Which is
that country and western.
Right.
Yeah. That was okay. It was that was about a country and western club in South London where people pretended to be cowboys and pretended.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And
I'll have to go look for that. Yeah.
It was it wasn't that good, I keep quiet about that one, but it was
really.
All right.
But I mean, how did when you've poured your heart and soul, and that was a trilogy of plays, wasn't it? It was 3 different plays.
Right. Yeah.
I can't imagine. My husband Martin is in the middle of a trilogy of music things. We can't even come up with a product name for it because it's videos, it's full-length songs, it's got character actors in it, it's multimedia, it's all of this. I call it Harry Potter for grown-ups. But I can't imagine getting to the end of a trilogy and then being able to sit back 20, 30 years later and say it wasn't very good, but that's you. You're so humble. It knocks my socks off.
I'm not. It wasn't that good.
You should know.
I mean, the thing about being a writer, you don't like everything you've ever done. I mean, you quite like them. And when you're doing them, you're doing your best. But later on, you might think, well, no, that was okay. But some things you love, and often the things that you really love didn't get famous. I mean, people know about That Bird and Stardust, but I'm much more fond of books one called Sunday Morning, one called Shadow.
I love that.
Because they meet completely. Shadows on the Wall is about Hollywood and about me in Hollywood and all that. And Sunday Morning is, in a way, it's my autobiography, but not about me. So a lot of the things in it are about things I knew, where I lived. That house in Conton Hill Road is in there. What we had in Wimbledon is in there. And people are in there. And my son at the time was Dominic was working in Zimbabwe, and we went to see him.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and Dominic, we went to see him, and we went there, and he was teaching in a little village, miles from anywhere. Actually, the only white person in a huge black area, and he just loved it. But one day we went round a corner, and there's a little white girl there, and she was an albino, and she had a big hat on and things to cover her eyes, the sunglasses.
Yeah.
And the other kids were really nice to her and looking after her. And so in Sunday morning, there's an albino boy, which is an important part of it, and that's where that came from. So everything comes from somewhere, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm going to dig that out and start reading it again tonight.
You'll enjoy Sunday morning, I promise you. I did like it.
I remember.
I'm proud of it, you know.
I might grab it off her first. So for our viewers that are watching, you'll see scrolling across the bottom Ray's website, which is rayconnolly.co.uk. And there is just a plethora. Grab a nice cup of tea before you go to that website. There's just an unbelievable body of work of stuff that you've done. You know, journalism, radio, film, television, books. Do you have to struggle do you ever get writer's block, or do you just feel like if you're in the right place, tuned into the universe, it comes to you, or is it hard work?
I get writer's block all the time, but like everybody else, you just get it. But now and again, you just get a good idea. When, as you know, I was in hospital recently with COVID last year in intensive care for 6 months, and they didn't think I was going to make it. And I'm thinking, well, when I get home, I want to write about this, because if I don't, I'll forget what it was like to be in this situation. So I wrote a radio play called Devoted to You, based on the Everly Brothers song, you know, which I've always loved. Yeah. And, you know, that's where that comes. I mean, they always come from somewhere. There's always some trigger. And that was a trigger for that. And,
right. Well, at least after the nightmare that not just you, but Plum and the kids and the whole family had to go through with this, you know, a COVID being, when you caught it, was really kind of still a mystery, and B, then having to be separated, and your poor wife had to quarantine all by herself, right? The kids couldn't comfort her.
Right.
Yeah,
if anything at all good came out of it, I suppose it's no consolation, but you've turned it, you know, they gave you lemons and you've made lemonade.
Yeah, lemonade. That's what it is, lemonade. But I mean, the point is, I wanted to sort of tell people that actually you can, if you're lucky, survive. And actually, in a way, I'll tell you one thing. I began joking about my brush with the Reaper, and one of my children said, "Don't say that, Dad. You weren't there. You don't know what it was like." And I didn't know. Plum was there. She was on the sharp end. She got the phone call from the hospital, never knowing whether the next one would tell her bad news that she didn't want to hear.
Yeah.
I don't do it anymore. I don't make the jokes anymore, because to me, because I wasn't there, I was off with the fairies in my mind. I was having hallucinations and God knows what. I didn't know what's going on. I didn't know I was so ill. No one tells you when you're dying.
No.
You don't. They come in and they're always smiles. And I pulled through, apparently because I had extraordinarily good lungs, which I never knew.
Oh,
but
great.
I discovered that. But I discovered that a few months ago. They kept doing these tests to find out how I'd done it.
Yeah.
And they said, "You've got extraordinary lungs." I went, "Really?" Yeah.
And so, is that from childhood, or you know what?
Oh yeah, it's one of these things that probably I just inherited them from some Irish peasant somewhere a long time ago. Had good lungs, and I was the one that got them, you know. And it made a difference. It sort of, when push came to shove, and I was hanging on, my lungs kicked in and got me through. When other poor people, maybe in the next bed, they didn't have that. So you know, it's just the luck of the Irish, if you want.
How long after your last negative test did you have to wait before they recommended getting vaccinated?
It was they couldn't vaccinate me until, well, I always think you have antibodies when you come out. I came out of hospital just exactly a year ago.
There you go, yeah.
And I got my first jab in January, and then my second jab later. And I just had a booster last week.
Wow.
So I'm all jabbed up now.
Yes, good. I mean, I still, you can't be judgy about people who don't want to get the vaccine, because I understand.
Well, don't get me on about them.
So,
they drive me crazy.
It's hard.
Of course.
It's hard to understand, but, I mean, I suppose people have their reasons. I have a hard time with it too, but, especially that, but it's like kids, isn't it? The more you tell them they shouldn't do, or they can't have, or they can't say, or the more they push the envelope, the more they want to defy you and do it. It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's difficult for sure. I'm trying to fix my mouse here so that I can show. There we go.
What are we looking at?
So, just some of our fans commenting. They're grateful for this interview and loving it, and so good. Ray had good lungs and pulled through. Just sending you best wishes and all of that. Good stuff.
Never mind all that. Go on Amazon and buy all his stuff.
Exactly.
So he can live in the poverty to which he is accustomed.
Exactly.
I say buy all his stuff so that you can live in the poverty to which you are accustomed.
Yeah, well.
So what's next for you? What's next for the writer Ray Connolly?
I don't know. That's what frightens me a bit. I have no idea. I'm sort of sitting here thinking. Well, at the moment, I'm writing a long article about from coming home to now, and how long COVID takes a very long time.
Yes.
And how your body changes. I mean, I can't eat steak now or any red meat. I can't eat that. I can't drink more than one glass of wine. It's a shame. I used to love it. Can't do that. I've been putting on weight at 0.5 pound a month or a week. So it took me from, I'm now 140 pounds, yeah? I was down to like 138 pounds, 130. I mean, so it took forever to get back. The other thing is that you discover that I wouldn't go and see people at first when I came out, because I looked terrible. And I thought, I don't want people to see me like this and say, God, Ray Connolly looks terrible. So I wouldn't, when they said, can we give Club a break and I'll take you for a walk? I said, well, I can't quite know. In a few weeks, because I thought they're going to look at me and say, my God, he looks half dead. So I didn't want to do that, So vanity got me where I am. Yeah.
Well, thank God you got through it. And, we when we heard that you were A, had COVID, and B, that you'd been taken to hospital, we were lighting candles and doing voodoo dances and rain god prayers and all sorts of stuff.
Well, it worked. Thank you. It worked.
The power of the universe, man. It's a crazy thing. I sound like an old hippie now. I sound like John Lennon.
Apparently, my son's wife asked for prayers in Westminster Abbey, and that must have helped. I thought, Westminster Abbey. There you go.
Yeah.
Gosh. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been an absolute joy. And I think now is as good a time as anybody to let all you kids know that we are blessed and lucky enough that Ray has generously written the foreword to Angie's next forthcoming book, which my husband Martin's working on the cover design, and I'm working on the layout and the editing and all that stuff. That takes a hot minute, but it will be featuring the erudite stylings of one Mr. Ray Connolly. So thank you very much for that.
I'm flattered to be asked.
Give my love to Plum.
Absolutely.
I will do. She's downstairs making me dinner now.
Oh, lovely. But no steak, no red meat.
Oh, no steak. That's all gone.
Just the odd beans on toast.
Exactly
right.
Good. Right. All right, my darling. Will you stay well? Stay in touch, and everybody out there, go to rayconnolly.co.uk and check out his unbelievable body of work while he gets his unbelievable body back to work. There you go. See what I did there?
Oh,
thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Angie.
All right, my sweet.
Ray.
Lots
God
of
bless
love.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to TeaFlix, and check out Dr. Angie's books, Organic Teas and CBD, at mrsmccartneysteas.com. Toodle pip!